Hello! Back doing a little deck tech for this green weenie list. This is very, very straightforward. You're trying to hit one of these hierarchs and then go to a 3 on turn 2. Some of them hit really hard. In the case of Groundbreaker here, some of them are just big bodies. That's essentially what you're trying to do with this deck, is just plop down some big bodies. So we'll start with the mana producers. We have 4 Noble Hierarchs and 2 Ignoble Hierarchs. But the Exalted trigger is very nice, especially if you hit a Groundbreaker off of it.
Yes, boosting him up to just be that extra point. Guy that disappears is useful.
Yeah, 7-2 trample, trample haste on turn 2, pretty solid. To take advantage of some of these giant 3-drops that are coming down, we have 4 Pelt Collectors, which of course grow whenever something bigger enters or when it dies. And if Pelt Collector is big enough, then it gains trample. So with, again, Groundbreaker, this is pretty solid because you get 2 triggers in the same turn.
Yes, he becomes a 3/3 afterwards.
Yeah. And Experiment 1, very similar to Pelt Collector. Instead of getting trample, it gets the ability to regenerate, so it's a pretty good chump blocker.
And it only works on enter, which is why it's...
Yes.
Not quite as good.
3 Strangleroot Geist, just an efficient guy. Adds to your devotion to green, which we'll get to shortly.
Yes, usually triggers the Pelt Collector as such the first time, and as a hasted attacker, if they chump it or eat it, it grows immediately, and then you get another trigger. So
yeah, and then we got a bunch of 3s. So the classic Groundbreaker, it's a ball lightning transposed to green, trample haste 6/1, sack it at the end of turn. Just a giant dude that hits you for a lot of damage out of nowhere, especially with Exalted triggers. Steel Leaf Champion, a 3-mana 5/4 that can't be blocked with or by creatures with power 2 or less, so can't really chump block that guy. Polukranos, so this is a legendary creature, so running 4 might not be best, but it has a really interesting ability. So it's a 4/5 for 3 with reach, which is already pretty busted. Makes it better than the card that used to be in this deck, which was just a 4/5 for 3.
Yes.
And that's it. But even beyond that, if you get tired of just having a piddly little 4/5 for 3, you can pay 6 and a Phyrexian white, which will pretty well always be Phyrexian unless you Noble Hierarch it, to transform it into what is effectively a Wormcoil engine. So it's a 6/6 with reach and lifelink. It has reach instead of death touch. And then when it dies, you get a 3/3 with reach and a 3/3 with lifelink. But we have a Timbermare at 4. Just a 4 mana 5/5 with haste. When it enters, it taps every other creature. So kind of fun. You can sort of get them for those last few points out of nowhere after they've created a bunch of blockers that can stand in your way. Just ignore all that, tap them all out, swing for 5. Usually 6, because you have an Exalted guy.
Yes, he does tap all of your creatures, but
yes,
as the finisher, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And you can, of course, sequence it in certain ways where you play that first, and then you can play stuff afterwards still, if you need some extra damage. We have 2 Ghalta Primal Hunger, so it's a 12/12 for... How much is it? 12?
Yes.
But it never actually costs 12 because it costs a colorless mana less for each power, I believe.
Yes.
The total
X
power.
Less, where X is the total power of creatures you control.
Yeah. So in the case of this deck, you're getting, on turn 2, pretty reasonably sized power. So you can make him quite a bit cheaper. Just like plop down a Groundbreaker and a Strangleroot Geist, and it's pretty solid. So, then we get to spells. I will save the best for last, but we have 4 Collected Company. Collected Company, of course, you can look at your top 6 and get 2 creatures that cost 3 or less, which is almost everything in this deck except for these guys. So, you definitely want to be hitting like 2 Groundbreakers. That's pretty devastating.
Yes, that is absolutely devastating, but you have Groundbreaker and something else.
Yeah.
It'll serve quite well, because the something else will stay behind for the next turn.
And, of course, the all-star in this deck, the kill you literally out of nowhere. I could attack with a Hierarch and kill you out of nowhere. Aspect of Hydra, so target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is your devotion to green. And if you have noticed the theme here, there's a lot of 3 green
Yes, yeah.
3 drops.
A couple of 2 greens, then you have a bunch of 3 greens.
Yes. And, of course, an Aspect of Hydra on a Groundbreaker that's attacking. That could be lethal in 1 shot, so if you have enough other things, of course. But yeah, we're very devoted to green, so it's good. For lands, we've got simple 10 forests. Don't really need anything super fancy here. I've got 1 Waterlogged Grove, just for a little bit of card draw. It's possible there should be more of those in this list. Collected Company is nice for some card advantage, but might be nice to run a few more of those. We also have 3 Castle Garenbrig. This just basically accelerates us from 5 mana to 6 mana, as long as we're spending it only on creatures, which there's lots of creatures. This is actually kind of nice because we have so many 3s. If you have a couple of them in your hand a turn early, maybe even 2 turns early, if you have some of these guys, you can just plop down a couple 3s. Pretty nice. And then we have 4 Prismatic Vista, which we only have forests, so might as well. Yeah. So, that is the updated version of Green Weenie.